Hey Milden, Tom here. Today is Friday, Friday of Holy Week, Good Friday. Although, ironically, it's not an easy day to find much good in it at all. For Jesus, it was a very bad day. It started off dreadful, and it just got worse, until finally it ended with his being placed in a tomb, given up for dead. It began in the dark of the night. Remember, on Thursday evening, he had been arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane by the chief priests and by the temple police. And he's taken away, and he's taken to the high priest's house. And there he is examined by the leadership, and they're all finding ways to put him to death. Meanwhile, outside in the courtyard, Peter is waiting to see what will happen, and bystanders begin to notice him, and he's asked three times, "Are you not the friend of the Galilean, Jesus?" And Peter denies even knowing Jesus. And this is the same Peter who a few hours before had said, "Oh, Jesus, all the others may defend you, but I will never desert you." And sure enough, he did. He denied even knowing Jesus, and he felt terrible for it. After the grilling by the chief priest, Jesus is sent to the Pilate, the Roman governor. And Pilate examines Jesus and then doesn't really find enough fault in the man to condemn him to death, even though the crowd seems to be interested in having that happen. So Pilate sends Jesus to King Herod, not Herod the Great of long ago, but still a Jewish king named Herod. And Herod mocks Jesus, sends him back to Pilate. Pilate finally bends to the will of the crowd who seem intent on Jesus dying, so he condemns him to death. And then he turns him over to his soldiers, and the soldiers beat Jesus and they mock him. They put a crown of thorns on his head, and then he is forced to carry his cross through the streets of Jerusalem, the Via Dolorosa it's called, and he goes to Golgotha, and there he is nailed to the cross, and then in execution fashion, which is what the crucifixion was about, it was reserved for all kinds of rebels and insurrectionists and murderers, and there was Jesus, who had never done anybody any harm, among them. And he's on that cross for several hours, and he says some remarkable things. Things like, to the thief next to him, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And to his mother, as he is dying, he entrusts her care to the disciple that he loved and said, "Mother, behold your son." And Jesus says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And at one point he cries out in an agony, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And then finally, at the end, he says, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." And he breathes his last and dies. He's taken down from the cross, and he is buried in a tomb owned by Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph is a member of the Sanhedrin, the very court that condemned Jesus earlier that day to death. I think Joseph must have been voting in the minority because apparently he was a secret disciple of Jesus and loved him very much. And Jesus was buried in Joseph's tomb in time for sundown. And sundown, you see, began the Sabbath, the day of rest. And ironically now, Jesus is at rest. Perhaps not the rest that he looked for or that anybody looked for, but it was the rest he now had. I wish I could brighten the spirit of this talk and this day, but it's so hard to do that. At the church I formerly served, we had a circle out front, And every year at this time, we'd put up a cross, and on that cross, we'd drape a black cloth. Now, this circle was near the highway, so when cars passed by, they could look over and see the cross draped in the black sash. And it would be a reminder to them that even though life seems to go on as normal as it always does on Good Friday, the world just goes its way. Still, there's that visual symbol that today is unlike other days. Today is a day that we remember and we grieve for the loss of a very good life. There are many things about the life of Jesus that were meaningful, and I don't think it'd be very hard for us to name 5 of them. I mean, just walk through the Bible for 2 or 3 pages and you'll find easily 5 things about the life of Jesus that were very meaningful. But Good Friday asks a different kind of question. Today we're asked not about what is meaningful in his life, but what is meaningful in his death. Can you list 5 things about his death that are meaningful? I believe you can. But when it comes to listing those things, sometimes we have to dig pretty deep and think pretty hard. But can you think of 5 things about the death of Jesus that were important and meaningful and ultimately beneficial for you and me? The video for today will end at this point. I'll be back again tomorrow to think about Saturday. What happened on Saturday? We will see. Until then, take care and God bless.